Hi everybody, and welcome to Once Upon a Scarf. This channel celebrates the art of the vintage scarf, and today I'm so happy to bring you a masterpiece by one of the greatest names in art history. Yes, Salvador Dali did scarf designs, and yes, these vintage pieces regularly turn up for sale online from anywhere from $50 to several $100s. We all know that Dalí was a Surrealist, but many do not know that the Surrealism movement began as a protest. World War I had devastated a generation of young men. The Surrealist movement's founders burned to express the absurdity of so-called rational thought driving a war in which 40 million people died. Artists, poets, and creatives of all kinds came together to take a stand against a system they felt was rotten. By using imagery that came from dreams and hallucinations and the id of Sigmund Freud, they aimed to transform the world. Their idea was this: humanity would be in a better place if we shifted our emphasis away from the rational, conscious thought into the other land of the unconscious. Salvador Dali was one of Surrealism's greatest masters and greatest popularizers. This is still true today. His imagery has the uncanny ability to captivate even non-art lovers with its utter strangeness, its utter rightness. Sigmund Freud himself once said, after meeting Dalí in London, "I have been inclined to regard the Surrealists as complete fools, but that young Spaniard, with his candid, fanatical eyes and his undeniable technical mastery, has changed my estimate." Dalí adored Freud, at least at the beginning, so this must have been the ratification that sealed his ever weirder and more baroque quest toward recognition as a genius. I could spend hours on Surrealism, but let's cut to the chase. How did this painter begin designing scarves, and what does the imagery mean? As far as I can tell, no art historian, museum curator, or scholar has ever dissected this particular work. So join me in Uncharted Territory. So nuts and bolts first. The scarf has its labels intact, which is incredibly helpful for a collector. The item is pure silk and was produced by Wesley Simpson. A little online digging reveals that Simpson was an American textile converter working in mid-century. This means he commissioned freelance artists to produce designs for furnishing fabrics, dressmaking fabrics, and scarves. Mr. Simpson must have been a very sophisticated individual. He was married to the well-known dress designer Adele Simpson, advised the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and of course had the great sense to tap Dalí among other artists, bringing his work to an American post-war market that was hungry for European sophistication, avant-garde art, and something more out there than, say, florals and cute doggies on their silken headwear. I'm always really happy to find an advertisement attached to a scarf. It situates it in time and place. Here we see Simpson's for this pattern and for another by Dalí. It reads, "Wonderful gifts for the girl who collects original scarves as her fashion hobby." So let's move to the artwork itself. Dalí specialized in what he called critical paranoia. This is a somewhat scary and off-putting term for a very simple concept. If you stare at something long enough, it can transform into something else. Famous examples would be seeing Jesus on a piece of toast, or, if you're Gen Z, an Among Us imposter in a fire hydrant. Not sus at all. This is what our minds do. And Dalí played on this neurological quirk to the hilt. Another one of his obsessions was the contrast between soft and hard. The shell of an egg versus its tender insides. The freakiness of a metal clock melting in the sun. Both of these preoccupations are visible in this scarf. What we see broadly is a typical Dalí landscape with a deep, deep vanishing point, a vast desert or stage for the play of dreams. It's populated by empty suits of armor propped up on sticks, a pair of Dalí's trademark crutches, a broken coin in the foreground, blacklit clouds to the rear, and cracks surrounding a sketched-in frame. Every single one of these elements has a double meaning. Come with me now on a tour of Salvador Dali's subconscious. The first thing that I see is that the clouds congeal into the face of a young woman. eyes, nose, and mouth, like a mirage on the horizon. These cracks in the urn and streaks around the edges are actually a reference to wonderful advice given by Leonardo da Vinci to the artistically blocked. Advice that Dalí, who was fascinated by optical illusions, took as a mantra. If you look upon an old wall covered with dirt, or the odd appearance of some streaked stones, you may discover several things like landscapes, battles, clouds, uncommon attitudes, humorous faces, draperies, etc. Out of this confused mass of objects, the mind will be furnished with an abundance of designs and subjects perfectly new. These two crutches are constant features of Dalí paintings, reminding us that the flesh always goes weak and needs the support of solid objects in order to stay upright on earth. In this way, they're almost a negative counterpoint to the cross of Jesus, which propelled a man into deity. This coin down here is very interesting. It's broken and bears part of Dalí's name. I only just learned that the word symbol, coming from the ancient Greek, meant pieces coming together to form meaning, and was often represented in the ancient Greek world by two halves of a broken coin coming together to make a greater whole. I think it's quite significant that Dalí keeps the two pieces close but separate. The symbolism is here, but it doesn't neatly add up. The final element of the scarf is the boldest part of the design. These wonderful vacated pieces of armor. They're topped by helmets that I believe refer to a notorious stunt Dalí pulled at an exhibition of Surrealist art in London in 1936. Before the exhibition, he paid a visit to the English coastline to procure a heavy brass diving helmet to wear at the exhibition to represent his deep dive into the unconscious. Well, what actually happened is that during his talk, the helmet nearly suffocated him and had to be wedged off in a very dramatic reenactment of Surrealist principles. Anyway, I think these rounded helmets, so unlike the typical crested ones of actual medieval warfare, are a tribute to his unexpected journey to the limits of existence. But we don't stop there. Below are breastplates with armholes, with a mythological face at the center. Of course, they could just be breastplates, but this is Dalí. Notice the color. Notice the nature of the hard, protective outer carapace. Do we see echoes of another Dalí favorite, the lobster, that essentially became his Surrealist calling card? And that's today's scarf story. Please stay tuned for more Dalí scarves, more Surrealist scarves, and more incredible art scarves, period, whose stories so deserve to be better known and have never been told before. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more.